The auction block was no place for a dying man. The sun hung low over Fort Laramie, casting long shadows across the dusty square where a crowd had gathered. Ranchers, traders, soldiers with whiskey on their breath, all here for the spectacle. The Union Army was selling off Confederate prisoners for $1 a head, just to be rid of them. Most were broken men, hollow-eyed and shuffling in chains, but one lay motionless on the wooden platform, his breath shallow, his shirt stiff with dried blood. Sarah Colton hadn't meant to stop. She'd come to town for flour and nails, her belly heavy beneath her faded calico dress, the weight of it a constant reminder of the child coming too soon and the husband buried too late. But something about the way the soldier's fingers twitched, like a man clinging to the edge of a cliff, made her pause. "Going once?" the auctioneer barked, nudging the unconscious man with his boot. "Hell, I'll pay you to take this one off our hands." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Sarah's grip tightened on her basket. "Ma'am, you don't want that trash," muttered the man beside her, a rancher she recognized from church. "Rebs ain't worth the rope to hang 'em." She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed fixed on the soldier's face. Sunburned, gaunt, younger than she'd expected. A boy, really. No older than James had been when he left for the war and never came back. The auctioneer sighed. "Last call. Then it's the ditch for him." Sarah's voice cut through the noise before she could think better of it. "I'll take him." A hush fell. The auctioneer blinked. "Lady, he's half dead already." She reached into her apron pocket and slapped a single silver dollar onto the table. The sound rang out like a gunshot. 2 hours later, the soldier was sprawled across her husband's old cot in the barn, his breath ragged. Sarah worked in silence, peeling back the blood-crusted fabric of his shirt to reveal the wound beneath. A bullet poorly dug out, the flesh around it swollen and hot. She pressed a damp cloth to his forehead, and his eyelids fluttered. "Easy," she murmured. "You're safe now." His lips moved, soundless at first. Then a whisper, hoarse, cracked with thirst, but clear enough to turn her blood to ice. "Sarah?" Her hands stilled. No one in Wyoming territory knew her name. But let's go back to where it all started. 3 days earlier, Sarah had stood in the same barn, staring at the empty space where James's plow horse used to be, sold like everything else to pay the bank. The wind howled through the cracks in the wood, carrying the scent of sagebrush and the distant rumble of thunder. She'd pressed a hand to her swollen stomach, counting the weeks left until the birth, counting the coins left in the jar beneath the floorboard. Not enough. The ranch was dying. The war had taken the men, the drought had taken the crops, and now the bank was coming for the land. She'd seen the way the neighbors looked at her. Pity in some eyes, calculation in others. A widow with no kin was a temporary thing in this country. Sooner or later, someone would offer to help, and the price would be the last thing James had left her. That's why she'd gone to town. Not for a wounded rebel, not for a ghost from a past she'd buried. But fate had other plans. The soldier's fingers twitched again, his breath hitching as pain dragged him toward consciousness. Sarah hesitated, then dipped the cloth back into the water basin. Outside, the wind moaned through the prairie grass. Somewhere, far off, a coyote cried, and the man who knew her name began to stir. The moment the name left his lips, Sarah recoiled as if struck. Her hands, steady just seconds before, now trembled against the rim of the water basin. The soldier's eyes, hazel, fever-bright, locked onto hers with a recognition that made her skin prickle. How? She had never seen this man before. She would have remembered. "You're burning up," she said, her voice tighter than she intended. "Delirious." He swallowed hard, his throat working like a rusted hinge. "You don't remember me." It wasn't a question. Sarah pressed the damp cloth back to his forehead, rougher than necessary. "I've never met you." A flicker of something, disappointment, relief, passed over his face before he winced, his body tensing against the pain. "Fort Bridger," he rasped. "Winter of '62. Her breath caught. James had been stationed there. The next morning, Doc Henderson rode out from town. his expression sour as he dismounted. "Heard you took in a rebel," he said by way of greeting, his eyes darting toward the barn. Sarah blocked the doorway, arms crossed. "I needed help with the harvest." The lie was thin, and they both knew it. The fields were dust. The old man sighed, rubbing his beard. "Sarah, folks are talkin'. Buying a wounded Confederate ain't just charity. It's a statement." She knew what he wasn't saying. Wyoming wasn't Kentucky. Here, the war wasn't over. "Check his fever," she said, stepping aside. "Then leave." Doc hesitated, then nodded. But as he passed her, he muttered, "You bury your husband just to dig up trouble?" Inside the barn, the soldier was awake, propped weakly against the hay bales. His gaze snapped to the doctor, shoulders tensing like a cornered animal. "Easy, son," Doc grunted, pressing a hand to his forehead. "Infections set in deep. You're lucky she found you." The soldier's eyes flicked to Sarah. "Yeah, lucky." Doc peeled back the bandage, whistling low at the angry wound. "Bullet? Shrapnel? Union or Confederate?" A beat of silence. Then, quieter, "Does it matter?" Doc's hands stilled. He glanced at Sarah, then back at the soldier. "To some folks, it's the only thing that does." By sundown, the news had spread. Eli Carter, the bank manager, arrived just as Sarah was drawing water from the well. His horse kicked up dust as he reined in, his smile all teeth. "Heard you got yourself a new hired hand." She didn't look up. "I don't owe you conversation, Eli. Just curious." He leaned forward in the saddle. "See, a man like that, enemy soldier, no papers, could cause problems for a woman in your delicate condition." The rope creaked in her hands. "Get off my land." He chuckled, but his eyes were cold. 3 weeks, Sarah. Payments due. And the bank don't take Confederate scrip." As he rode away, Sarah's grip on the bucket turned white-knuckled. Inside the barn, the soldier watched her through the slats, his face unreadable. That night, she dreamt of Fort Bridger. Snow. The smell of gunpowder. James laughing by the fire, his arms slung around a younger man. Hazel eyes, a crooked smile, who handed him a letter. "For your wife," the stranger said. "She oughta know you're coming home." She woke with a gasp, her heart pounding. The barn door was ajar, and the cot was empty. Next, the first light of dawn crept through the barn's weathered planks as Sarah stepped inside, her breath fogging in the chill air. The cot lay empty, blankets tossed aside in haste. A trail of blood-specked hay led to the back wall where the soldier leaned against the workbench, one hand clutching his bandaged side, the other fumbling with James' old revolver. Their eyes met, hers wide with alarm, his dark with exhaustion and something harder, fiercer. "You can't even stand," she said, voice low. He swallowed hard, the gun wavering in his grip. "Don't plan to." A beat passed. Somewhere outside, a meadowlark trilled, absurdly cheerful. Sarah took a slow step forward, then another, until she stood close enough to see the sweat beading on his brow. Without a word, she reached out and closed her hand over the revolver's barrel, pressing it gently downward. His fingers trembled against hers, but he didn't resist. "They'll come for you," he rasped. "Men like that banker don't ask twice." The truth of it settled between them like a stone. Sarah exhaled, her thumb brushing the cold steel of the gun. James' gun, loaded the day he rode out. "You knew my husband." The soldier's jaw tightened. He looked past her, toward the open door where golden light spilled across the dirt floor. "We served together. Winter of '62, like I said." His voice dropped. "He talked about you. Every damn night." A gust of wind rattled the barn door. Sarah's pulse thundered in her ears. How did he? "Quiet." The soldier suddenly stiffened, his free hand snapping out to grip her wrist. His eyes locked onto something beyond her shoulder. "Listen." Hoofbeats, distant but growing closer. Too many for a neighbor. Sarah turned toward the sound, the revolver heavy in her hand. The soldier pushed himself upright with a grunt of pain, his breath coming fast. "That ain't the bank." Through the open door, A dust cloud rose on the horizon. Riders, a dozen at least. And ahead of them, galloping hard, Doc Henderson's sway-backed mare. The old man reined up so sharply his horse nearly stumbled. "Sarah!" he shouted, face ashen. "They're saying you're harboring a war criminal, that he's one of Quantrill's raiders." The soldier went very still. Doc's gaze darted to him, then back to Sarah. "Judge Parker's with them. They got a rope, girl." The meadowlark sang again. The soldier's fingers found Sarah's sleeve, urgent. "Give me the gun." She didn't move. Couldn't. The hoofbeats grew louder. "Sarah," the soldier whispered, raw. "The letter. The one I gave him. James never sent it." Her breath caught, and the riders came into view. The riders fanned out in a half-circle around the barn, their horses stamping and blowing. At their center, Judge Parker sat ramrod straight in his saddle, his silver beard catching the morning light. A coiled rope hung from his pommel. Sarah stepped into the doorway, blocking their view inside. The revolver weighed heavy in her apron pocket. "Morning, Judge." Her voice didn't shake. Parker's eyes narrowed. "Hand him over, Sarah. No need for this to get ugly." Behind her, she heard the soldier's ragged breathing, the soft creak of floorboards as he shifted his weight. Doc Henderson edged his horse forward. "Now hold on, Elias. You stay out of this, Sawbones," snapped one of the riders, Cooper, the livery owner. His face was flushed with whiskey and righteousness. "That bastard rode with Quantrill. You know what they did at Lawrence." A murmur ran through the posse. Sarah's fingers curled around the revolver. The soldier spoke suddenly, his voice carrying past her shoulder. "I was at Lawrence, but not with Quantrill." He stepped forward, wincing as he put weight on his injured side. "I was a scout for the 2nd Colorado. Union." Cooper spat. "Liar. Why'd you run when they brought you in then?" The soldier's gaze flicked to Sarah for half a heartbeat. "Because some truths get men killed just as fast as lies." Judge Parker held up a hand for silence. His eyes never left the soldier's face. "Prove it." A long pause. The wind stirred the prairie grass. Then, slowly, the soldier reached for his collar. Sarah tensed, but all he did was pull free a tarnished dog tag, its stamped letters barely visible. U.S. 2nd Kolovalov. Parker's expression didn't change. "Could be stolen. Check the records at Fort Laramie," the soldier said. "Name's Daniel Beckett. Discharged after Red River campaign." His jaw tightened. Then arrested by mistake when some eager lieutenant thought all Southern accents mean rebel. Sarah watched the judge's face, saw the doubt creeping in. Cooper wasn't convinced. "What about the letter?" he demanded. "Doc said something about a letter." All eyes turned to Sarah. Her fingers brushed the folded paper in her pocket, the one she'd found tucked in James' Bible after his death, the edges worn from secret handling. "The one that began, 'My dearest Sarah, by the time you read this, I'll have done something unforgivable.'" The soldier, Daniel, looked at her then with something like apology, like grief. Judge Parker sighed. "Enough of this. Beckett, you're coming to town to sort this out proper." He turned to Sarah. "And you ought to know better than to." A gunshot cracked in the distance. Every head whipped toward the sound. Another shot followed, then another, spaced, deliberate. Signal shots. Doc Henderson went pale. "That's from the North Trail. Indians?" Parker wheeled his horse. "Cooper, take 3 men and—" "No." Daniel staggered forward, gripping the doorframe. His face had gone deathly pale. "That's Army spacing. And they only fire like that when—" A young boy on a lathered pony came tearing into the yard, screaming, "Shen War Party! Headed this way!" Chaos erupted. Horses reared. Parker bellowed orders. Through it all, Sarah felt Daniel's hand close around her wrist. His whisper was urgent. "The letter." James didn't desert. He was scouting for the Cheyenne peace talks when Custer's men ambushed them. They killed everyone. His fingers trembled. "Sarah, that war party isn't here for the ranch. They're here for you." "Because James." Another volley of shots, closer now. "He was their friend. The air smelled of gunpowder and sagebrush as Sarah stood frozen, Daniel's words ringing in her ears. James was their friend. The truth of it settled like a stone in her chest, heavy and undeniable. All those nights she'd lain awake wondering why her husband's body had never been recovered, why the army had been so vague about his death. Now she knew. A war cry echoed from the ridge, high and piercing. The posse's horses shied, eyes rolling white. Judge Parker cursed, yanking his rifle from its scabbard. Everyone to the house. Bar the doors. Cooper wheeled his horse, panic twisting his face. The hell with that. I ain't dying for some rebels. Daniel moved faster than a man with a bullet wound should. He snatched the revolver from Sarah's apron and fired once into the air. The shot silenced the chaos. Listen to me, he barked, his voice raw with pain but iron steady. Those aren't attack cries, they're calling for parley. They're looking for her. He jerked his chin at Sarah. And if you idiots start shooting, we all die. Parker hesitated, his rifle half raised. How do you know that? Because James taught me the signals. Daniel's gaze locked onto Sarah's, pleading. You have to go out there. Alone. Doc Henderson made a strangled noise. She's 8 months pregnant. Another cry came from the ridge, closer now. Not a scream, a name. Sarah. Drawn out, questioning. Her hands shook. She thought of the letter in her pocket, the words she'd read 100 times without understanding. I ride tonight to meet Tall Bear's band. If this fails, they'll blame me for the massacre at Washita. But if I don't try, more will die. James hadn't deserted. He'd been trying to stop a war. She stepped forward. Daniel caught her arm. Take this. He pressed the revolver into her hand. Not for them. For them. He nodded toward the posse, where Cooper was already reloading with trembling fingers. Sarah met his eyes, this stranger who knew her husband, who'd carried his secrets. Nodded once. Then she walked toward the ridge, her back straight, her heart hammering. The first Cheyenne rider appeared atop the bluff, silhouetted against the dawn. His face was painted for war, but his hands were empty. At his side, a younger warrior held something aloft, a cavalry hat, bleached by sun and time. James's hat. Behind her, Cooper cocked his rifle. Sarah didn't turn around. She raised her empty hands toward the ridge and called out the only Cheyenne word James had ever taught her. Huvahoe, peace. For a breathless moment, nothing moved. Then the lead rider nudged his pony forward, descending the slope. As he neared, Sarah saw what hung around his neck. A brass button from a Union officer's coat. James's button. The warrior studied her face, then her swollen belly. His eyes softened. He reached into his saddlebag and drew out a small bundle wrapped in doeskin. When he offered it, Sarah saw the stitching, crude but careful, the work of a man more accustomed to holding a rifle than a needle. James's work. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the doeskin. Inside lay a tiny pair of moccasins, beaded in the pattern of the Cheyenne morning star. For the baby, the warrior touched his chest. Tall Bear. Then he gestured to her belly, then west, toward the mountains. Your husband's spirit rides there. He waits for his son. Behind her, Cooper's rifle clattered to the ground. Sarah pressed the moccasins to her lips, her tears cutting tracks through the dust on her cheeks. Somewhere in the distance, a meadowlark sang. The wind carried the scent of rain. And for the first time since James's death, she didn't feel alone.